To be your next Secretary of State. His bio says that he's a husband, a father, a combat veteran, a battle-tested constitutional conservative. That sounds like racism or something to me these days. You're a right-wing extremist when you talk about the Constitution. But folks, we're gonna talk with Ohio Secretary of State candidate Marcell Strbich and ask him what the Second Amendment means to him, and how the role of Secretary of State can actually defend the Second Amendment. So with that, I'll bring him in and welcome to the Ohio Gun Owners live stream, Marcell. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be with you guys, and you're doing yeoman's work. I love the bills and the complement of the three you're working on. The Freedom to Carry Act, you got the Ohio Self-Defense Act, the Second Amendment Protection Act. So I'm really following those, and we got to get some movement, I hope.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. When gun owners see what the Democrats do when they have political power, like they are doing right now in Virginia, where the Democrats took the trifecta, and then within 60 days, they passed 9 massive gun control bills, one on top of the other, totally trampling over the bipartisanship that Ohio Republicans are constantly focused on. It makes us jealous that Republicans don't fight as hard as the Democrats do when they have the opportunity. So, yeah, I'm impressed that you even know the bill numbers or the bill names that we're working on right now in the General Assembly. So tell us in your own words what the Secretary of State can do, because we have a perspective on this. And for OGO members who are watching this at whatever format, we only have candidates on here to give access to you guys who have signed the 2026 Ohio Gun Owners Candidate Survey. So they don't get to talk to you unless they've already done that. And I'm very happy to say that Marcell Strbich has aced his Ohio Gun Owners Survey. He answered every single one of our pretty extensive list of 12 questions correctly. So Marcell, just take it from here. It's all yours.
Well, absolutely. I mean, 2A for me, I come out of the profession of arms. You know, since the age of 22, I've been in the Air Force. I had to qualify every single year on the M9. I had to go downrange in 2010 and in bed with the Army Ranger Regiment. You're not going to find really more proficient arms users than some of our ex-military and as a special operations community guys. I was helping them more with the overhead remote pilot aircraft stuff. You know, I'm an Air Force intel officer by trade. And so my job was to set the battle space for them, identify and detect enemy combatants. And the thing that's useful for when you look at the elections is you got to identify where the cheat comes from. You got to identify the areas of soft, the weakness, the exploitability. There's plenty of that when you look at election administration. This country went through a whirlwind in 2020. We didn't fix the issues that precipitated the problems we face as a nation today. And we've got to go back and we've got to fortify, just like Ohio Gun Owners is trying to fortify 2A, trying to fortify election administration. Now, to answer your question, it's because you're a no-nonsense guy, the Secretary of State is the deciding vote of a 5-person ballot board panel when it comes to constitutional referendum ballot language. And as you can tell, because there's been dominance for years in the Ohio Republican legislature, the other side has realized that they can't win in that regard. So they have now begun to build an entire multi-year strategy around initiating ballot referendums.
Yeah.
So you have this qualified immunity ballot referendum that basically will remove civil protections from police who, you know, are engaged in activity. They can be sued. They're not going to want to be police officers after that. So there's all kinds of things, you know, from what they call the Ohio Votes Count Act, removing safeguards, you know, you name it. And so the Secretary of State is very important because they sit there and they arbiter that particular part of it. So I would think that could be very important, especially if someone gets an itch in the next few years in Ohio to try to circumvent what are fairly healthy Second Amendment rights protections. I mean, we got preemption law. We got obviously enhanced preemption law because you have all of these local mayors and municipalities, despite the fact we've had law for years, some of the strongest, probably because of the work that folks like you and others have done. But that is even under attack because they don't follow it. So somebody needs to punish them, right? There needs to be enforcement, and maybe for private citizens to be able to, I'm just giving an example in my view, private citizens to be able to sue that would definitely set them on their back heels.
We definitely agree with you on the whole citizen-initiated ballot referendums and stuff like that, because we're not fans of mob rule. And we've always taken the position here at Ohio Gun Owners that the communists have essentially long ago, and this is my words, everybody, this isn't exactly his words, but the communists long ago took over all of our educational systems. And so we're graduating little mini communists every year, who are then going out and voting. And so over time, you have a catastrophic problem with the ability to have mob access directly to the state constitution, which is why it is growing in leaps and bounds with every election cycle, because they keep ramming more crap in there via the 50% plus one of the general population. And as we've seen on time and time again over the last couple of years, all it takes is some outside interest groups to come in, spend millions of dollars, and they can get whatever they want done and rammed right into our Constitution. Take the pro-life issue, for example. So we very much resemble your remarks in that regard. We're not big fans of direct mob rule.
They call it direct democracy, Chris. Direct democracy.
Yeah. And that can lead to total anarchy just as easy. So we very much love constitutional republics, which is what America is. So, so what made you, so you had that career track. Right. What made you look at the Ohio Secretary of State's race and think, oh, you know what, I'm going to drill down there? Because as gun voters, we were enraged in 2022 when they could just, snap their fingers and call a halt to the elections, the primary elections that were happening that year. There were several legislative candidates, I think, that would have been in 2022, but it was direct interference in this process. So that's something we would point to as gun owners and just get mad about. What is it for you that made you jump in on this Secretary of State's race?
In 2020, I was personally in a very high-level office in the Pentagon, and I personally witnessed the immediate effects of an illegitimately conducted election across the country. From the moment the Biden administration took over, there were groups they identified, which would be very associated with 2A and others, that they viewed as domestic extremists. And they forced us to take computer-based training against ourselves. There was a system being put in place where they were almost DEI officers. They paid these people six figures to come in from colleges where, the indoctrination mill pumped them out. And they were basically throwing a wrecking ball at the system of merit over the course of 3-4 years. At the height of that, within the first year, was the COVID mandates. And the COVID mandates were systematic in punishing, intimidating, coercing service members like myself, and were illegitimate in the interpretation of law. And the military administrators really abused power, and there was no recourse for us. And so there was a small stand of Navy SEALs and others who took cases to the courts. I was part of a small core group of people that stood for the people that were being thrown out. We worked at religious accommodation requests, medical exemptions, you name it. But it took so much of my time and energy and mental state that I realized that we're going to have to reverse all this. So I started in the medical freedom movement, to be honest with you. And when I came to Ohio, that's how I met, friends like Stephanie Stock and others who are running this Conscientious Right to Refuse Act.
Yes.
Of course, they've been stymied for years because of the special interests that control the legislative body members on that front. And what I did is, after really analyzing this, I said, what preempted all of this? What preempted it was that election. And so when that is still not fixed, we cannot address the symptom. We have to go back to the source. And I came to 2022, we saw an election in Montgomery County in Dayton, Ohio. It was decided 20 days after it reversed the results of an election for a local commissioner's race. There wasn't dual observation between both parties there, and they found ballots for up to 20 days afterwards. I said, this isn't just an issue in swing states. This is an issue in Ohio. And and then later in 24, we discovered third-party voter groups were submitting false registrations, impersonating people, because you can steal voter ID information.
Right.
And the genius Republicans in 2022, when they created a voter ID bill, they exempted mail-in ballots, right? So now driver's license and social security numbers, which are readily available for purchase or have been stolen, and now the plethora of non-citizens that have obviously obtained social security numbers are now privy to third-party groups running rampant across the state, registering people. And there's no detection for this. It's a signature, and every county board of elections is going to subjectively interpret a signature match. And that signature match could be false, like the first signature.
Exactly.
And as long as it's matching the second false signature, they're going to get a no excuse mail-in ballot. And I can't fathom running an election system like that going forward. So I got really involved. I wrote 3 election bills. I did all this unpaid. I wasn't expecting anything out of it. I didn't want to be an elected official. I thought I could, through the convincing data that I had, persuasion, which is the first law of politics, is don't be naive. These people don't want to be persuaded. They're not going to respect you unless they fear you. But in that regard, I started getting traction nationally. I did everything from codifying President Trump's executive order on preserving and protecting the integrity of elections. I ran a resolution through the state central committee. Embarrassingly, they refused to adopt it. And after just finally beating my head on the wall with multiple legislation, fighting special interests that the Board of Elections uses to defeat these bills, realizing how this system is concocted, people asked me in March of 2025 if I would run. So I looked across the landscape. I think, who's running? It's the treasurer. But the treasurer really announced 2 months prior that he was going to be a governor.
Right.
But then everybody shuffled chairs. He didn't want to run against Vivek. Well, that could have worked out. Who knows? But at the end of the day, he spent the next 10 months auditioning to be the lieutenant governor. And so really nobody's running to do their jobs. Nobody really is running for the primary position that they need to do to protect this country. So realizing that, I built my platform on President Trump's executive order, which I was already doing by writing the legislation. So it's been a breeze to go around and campaign to 60 plus counties. I've recruited hundreds of volunteers, and we're challenging the status quo recycled career politicians in Columbus. And we are a highly competitive race. We have an 8-point lead. We took a scientific poll by a firm that even the Ohio Republican Party can't dispute because they paid $100,000 plus for the services of this. And we're leading by 8. We got higher favorability in this race, and we got equal name ID. And the guy's running scared, and they're going around trying to claim that they've got the grassroots because they're getting backdoor county party endorsements. And I say, let them feel that way. Let them say what they want to say, because May 5th is coming up very close, and the people of Ohio can decide if they've had enough with this system. And if they want to make some true progress, it's time to get some political outsiders in the system.
Yeah, we like to talk about it here at Ohio Gun Owners in terms of like there being this permanent class of Columbus cartel that's just like this revolving musical chairs cast of characters. And, you know, to kind of put in crass terms, America in 2016 and I think 2020 and also 2024, they elected a hand grenade in Donald Trump and threw him into Washington to change things up. And the permanent establishment class, and I would say Robert Sprague is absolutely part of that, has very quickly adapted and learned how to wrap themselves in MAGA and pretend that they are agents of change in some capacity. But it's not just Ohio, it's all the states all across the country where you have Republican trifectas. These people are very much the same status quo as it has always been. And Robert Sprague is a perfect example of this. Again, for Ohio Gun Owners members who are watching this, we did survey Robert Sprague. We sent him a certified copy of his candidate survey in the mail. We published the tracking information for it. He received it at his house, and yet he refused to fill it out and put his positions on these things down on paper. I really liked what you said about these the people that are getting Social Security numbers now, because I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen it in some rougher neighborhoods in front of these shopping malls. You will see ballot harvesters out there who are registering anybody that walks going into these shopping centers, and they're doing that. I mean, who are paying these people? But this idea that there is just power in letting absolute anybody that can fog a mirror, whether they are legal or supposed to be here or not, that somehow can translate into a competent and functioning country and state is just, it's anathema. Our founding fathers would have laughed somebody like that out of the room. So what's the game plan that you've got in the last couple of weeks you're heading up to? I think, when does early voting start?
Yeah, early voting starts next week, April 7th. We have an election season, as everybody knows, not an election day. We're going to have to change that. We're going to have to get back to pre-printed hand markable paper ballots. That's another thing that's going to cost us a lot less. They'll be more auditable. We'll be able to put more eyeballs on that. And we're going to take our votes out of software, because software can't be verifiable. And those voting systems, in order to continue to remain in our system, are going to have to be certified by third-party independent security standards that are not from 2005. If you could believe it, our voting systems are being certified to a 20-year-old standard. And that's because the vendors have captured the entire industry of voting, and nobody has the cojones to,
industry capture. It's such a common thing in so many areas of American life now.
Right.
It's such a slap in the face. But yeah, let me just go through some of these questions and answers, everybody, that we asked Marcell, that he answered properly. Do you agree that strong election security measures are necessary as part of protecting the Second Amendment rights of gun owners? He answered yes. Would you require government-issued photo IDs and proof of U.S. citizenship to register? He said yes. Would you support eliminating unsecured ballot drop boxes? Of course, he said yes. Would you support single-day in-person voting as the standard? I think these long, drawn-out early voting periods are an absolute invitation to criminal actions. So he supported limiting that. Would you support transitioning Ohio to paper ballots, which you just talked about? Would you oppose and prohibit electronic voting machines and tabulators, and work towards that end anyway? I don't know if it could be accomplished in a single 4-year term.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's
especially like we just talked about, the special interest groups that'll line up against this stuff.
Oh my gosh. Hey, listen to this, Chris. I went to testify for HB 577, right? Should be a home run bill. Require a copy of a photo ID for mail-in ballots, right? I'm trying to clean up what the Republicans exempted for the sake of convenience. They argued that old people can't have copiers. There's no Kinkos, right? Anywhere in the world around them, right? They always take into account that the average voter can't do anything.
Right.
And they bought into this infantile mentality that the Democrats exude on the voter. And now the Republicans to get along with the Democrats because they don't want to fight, right? They don't got they're jellyfish backbone. They don't want to have that argument, and they don't have the knowledge or the facts. But 95% of people supported it. That Republicans, 70-some%, independents, even 64% Democrats. I went there to give proponent testimony. I show up, and the two Republicans, Marilyn John and Adam Byrd and Sharon Ray, who sits on the chair, are so busy trying to score political points for my opponent, who they're trying to help. And they're sitting there asking me about my voting record in such a disrespectful way for 17 years ago, as though that's what my testimony was about. I literally walked them through how a third-party voter group can impersonate and use this no identity proof system of online registration, and how they can not only register someone, but they can obtain a no excuse mail-in ballot. I walked them through it to the detail, and they didn't want to answer or talk about any of those things. They wanted to basically see if they could catch me in some kind of a talking point for my opponent. I mean, this makes these people so unserious and so unfathomable. That, this is what I have. And so it makes me even more zealous to run, because that's when you know that you got them. When they cannot make that happen. And I walked right through, passed around that landmine they tried to create. But these are the guests of gamesmanship of Columbus. And so it's going to take an outsider to basically stop this from continuing.
Yeah, I would say you definitely classify as an outsider, and lest anybody be deceived, what he just talked about there with those three clowns on the committee of Adam Byrd and Sharon Ray in particular. I think they're both in current leadership. If not, they were last cycle. A lot of people have this idea of legislators and elected officials as like these superhuman, super smart. Most of them are clowns, absolute party clowns that just simply sit there and swear fealty to whatever leadership tells them to do. And leadership in Ohio is absolutely captured. I mean, we supposedly have term limits in Ohio, right? But we have a current leadership in the House that's been serving consecutively since they first came into office in early January of 2007. It's a joke. The system is rigged in order to protect the establishment class. And because these outside interest groups that normally fund Democrats in other states know that they cannot do that here because of the composition of the state of Ohio, they've simply co-opted and captured Ohio Republicans. And that's why I think you are such a threat to the establishment, the musical chairs ring that currently exists. So thank you for being willing to step into this role. I don't think there was anything else in that survey that we really needed to go over. What about this one here? Because we threw that in there as kind of a curveball, making Election Day a state holiday. What's your thoughts on that one?
You already have protections when it comes to employers cannot fire people. They have to give them it says this in statute. I can't quote the exact one off the top of my head, but if you look it up, a reasonable amount of time to vote. I don't know of any single employer out there, private sector, whatever it may be, that's ever tried to punish or fire somebody for going to vote on election day. No. If you can show me some evidence or disprove, I'm all about it. But I think the accommodation is already built in. If you really want to make this more accommodative for those that are going to say, I can't get to vote in person, because there's always going to be people who are not in the precinct, mobility restricted. And I'm all for excuse-based, valid excuse, justifiable reasons to continue to vote by
the way it used to be.
Right. And we used to be for reasons that were, and guess what happened? In 2005, we tried to pass a constitutional ballot referendum. I believe it was the legislature that was going to make it no excuse. 63% of Ohioans said, no, I want a reason for us to have to vote by valid excuse. Guess what happened the next year? They went ahead anyway and made it no excuse. Forget the fact that 2/3 of Ohioans back then were fine with the reason. So all this whole aspect of voting has now become all about voter access, voter convenience. But if that was so important, then why aren't those two premises anywhere inside of federal law? They're not. There's no federal law that says that you need to make ballot accessibility this or that. They're not. What is in federal law and what's in the Ohio Constitution is that you have to qualify eligibility. Well, guess what? In Ohio, we don't do that before we issue a voter ID number. We assume the information on a voter registration form is correct at the Board of Elections. We input that information. The system kicks out a voter ID number, and then only later do we learn that there's invalid or mismatch information. And then, after the fact, we go try to find out and send people letters at the cost or expense of the taxpayer. That's the exact opposite of how it should work. This is the dysfunction of what voter registration is today. And that's why I've struggled to trust a system that doesn't qualify eligibility, because what you've done is we have transferred risk into the vote casting, the vote counting, the vote certification. We've got to go back to the source. We've got to solve that at the source of it. And until we equip the Board of Elections with means and mandate to do their job and to hold them accountable to that, we're going to be running elections with some serious risk. So when LaRose, our Secretary of State, says we're easy to vote, hard to cheat, the system I want is easy to verify, hard to cheat. Make it easy to verify, and you'll see that there'll be very limited ability of any third-party groups to do much with clean voter rolls.
Well, I think they will be very terrified if you win this, or when you win this, to let you have access inside there to let the people know exactly how bad everything is. And we need that so badly right now at all levels of government. Good people to get in and then externalize the message. So we're big fans of video here at Ohio Gun Owners. We'd encourage you, if you win, don't use legacy media to get all this stuff out there. Just do Facebook live streams so the rest of us poor peons can see what's going on in reality. And then, but yeah, this is a big problem when you consider the fact that our founding fathers purchased this country for us with their own blood, and then they said it was for us and our posterity. With the open borders that have been destroying this country and stealing the power of Native Americans' votes, there's huge amounts of money lined up in these special interest groups to make sure that this rigged system stays in place, because it transfers power from we the people, who we're supposed to give our consent to be governed by, and gives it to them. So thank you very much for running, for filling out our candidate survey. And that's good luck to you. And we're a 501c4, so we can't endorse anybody, but our best wishes to you. Good luck in your primary, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Keep up the fight. No compromise. Thank you.
Our pleasure.